So, this is probably going to be the third or the fourth. Well, I guess it's actually the fourth of Thus Spoke Zarathustra by Friedrich Nietzsche, and we're going to go ahead with the next section, or the next part of the summary, or analysis, or actually both. As always, the link to this analysis/summary is going to be down in the description, so if you want to check it out on your own, then please check it out on your own. But we're going to go ahead with, let me see, part 2, speeches 1 to 11. So this is the first time we're going through part 2. The other few days we have gone through part 1 and its several speeches and so on and so forth. But yeah, the child with the mirror, which is the first one that we're going to encounter and or that we are just digesting. The first speech of the second section begins much like part 1 did. Sarah, for the sake of simplicity, I'm saying Sarah, not the whole name, maybe also sad, because it's like, yeah, or C. Anyway, having left his disciples at the end of part 1, returns to his solitary mountain and stays there for many years. Though he is lonely, he grows in wisdom. However, he has a dream in which a child comes to him with a mirror. Sarah looks into the mirror, but instead of seeing his reflection, he sees only a devil's grimace and scornful lover. Or lover. You know what I mean. He interprets this dream to mean that his teachings are in danger, that the enemies of his teachings have distorted his thoughts and led his disciples astray. His disciples are not mirroring his teachings in the correct way, which means the overman will not become a reality. Sarah then begins to speak to the snake and to the eagle on a mountain. He has broken his self-imposed silence, but he feels that it is necessary. He begins to use descriptive imagery to describe his return. He compares himself to a lake pouring into the sea and a warrior preparing to go into battle. He takes joy not only in the fact that he will be returning to his friends, but also in the fact that he must destroy his enemies. Sarah knows that his anger will reinvigorate his teachings, even though his disciples might even be afraid of him. Sarah then leaves the mountain to return to mankind to give a new kind of wisdom to his disciples, a wild wisdom, on the blessed Isles, or Isles, whatever. Sarah begins a new set of speeches, not in the gentle way he spoke in part 1, but in a harsh critique of the work that his disciples have tried to accomplish. Sarah reappears suddenly, comparing himself to a north wind that knocks down ripe figs from their tree. Sarah appears to his disciples during the fall season, but even with the beauty that surrounds them, he implores his disciples not to take joy in the beauty. Instead, he tells them to look forward to a future time, a time of the overman. Sarah must remind his disciples that his teachings are for the coming of the overman and are not compatible with the teachings of Christianity or teachings of God. His disciples, it seems, had fallen prey to these Christian teachings. They have attempted to make Sarah's teachings into hybrid teachings, incorporating a Christian version of the overman. Sarah strongly rebukes his disciples for this and tells them again that there is no God. He tells his disciples that if there were gods, how could I stand not to be a god? Therefore, there are no gods. Sarah teaches his disciples again about the power of envy. Sarah knows that if God exists, the rivalry between his teaching of the overman and teachings of God would be unbearable. Instead, Sarah can see the future of his teaching. Therefore, God must not exist. For Sarah, death is a better state of being than the possibility of unfulfilled accomplishment. In this teaching, Sarah again demonstrates the usefulness of envy. To finish this speech, Sarah claims it has been the poets of the age that have created God or gods, and that poets lie too much. Instead, Sarah compels his disciples to take glory in their death, not in their everlasting life. This is the kind of poetry he muses that will help to create the overman in this life. This is the kind of poetry Sarah himself seeks to create. On the pitying. In this speech, Sad addresses those that think he has become too proud. Z tells us, I could actually also say he. He tells his disciples that this kind of pride is appropriate for a knower like him. Yes. Quote-unquote knower, by the way. A person who does not know must compare himself to a person who does, but a person who is a knower can only seek to transform himself ultimately into the overman. This speech hints that the enemies of Sara have made his disciples believe that they are foolish for thinking of themselves too highly. Sara says this is not so. It is better to do evil than to think small. He says Sara's enemies think small, but his disciples must become knowers. Only then will they become the overman. The point of Sara's speech is this: a person should not take pity on or identify himself with mankind. The only way to become the overman is to harden one's heart towards pity for mankind. Instead, one should show people the way to become knowers of the way of the overman. Well, I do want to point out that it kind of is reminding me of Jordan Peterson, and Jordan Peterson speaking in a very, I don't want to say motivating. Motivating is the wrong word here, but it is empowering. Empowering to see oneself as something greater. I mean, when he's talking about becoming a monster, which is definitely something that we all can be and we all can do, he's putting one into a very, very, very certain place. And I mean, he does know the work of Nietzsche as well, obviously, and of course, but it's very interesting. It's very interesting to see that. And well, it is, thinking about oneself in that way makes one very, people could say arrogant, if you're overdoing it, probably, but confidence might be a better suited word, the one that I actually want to use, because it's, the other one is so negative. I want to use something positive there, because I think it is something positive to regard oneself as something that's, highly accomplished, or just a high person, high in the hierarchy. Even if it is only you that is thinking that way. I mean, this is still gonna get you into a very certain place, in actually a pretty good place. Well, on the priests. As the group of priests pass by, Sara takes the moment to show his disciples just how much the spirit of Christianity has distorted and manipulated the good intentions of mankind. The priests, Sara says, are actually noble in intent, just as Sara is. They are self-sacrificing, just like Sara, and they seek something higher, just as he does. It is not the priest's fault that they are misled. The notion of the Savior binds them to false notions of pity for mankind. The priests are Sara's enemies because they teach mankind to be obedient to God and to the church. Sara teaches people to look beyond this to the goal of the overman. It is not the priests themselves who are wrong. They have much inner strength, but they are misled by the nature of Christianity. Christianity makes them doubt what they think, putting emphasis on their hearts and on giving pity towards mankind. Christianity makes people believe that they cannot overcome themselves. They need the help of an outside God. Sara teaches that one must become the overman by having a hard heart, and envy towards those who are better. Christianity, Sara says, is for those with a sultry heart and a cold head, which are qualities not to be found in one of his disciples. And even though I'm Catholic myself, I do want to say that it just definitely makes sense what he's saying, and it is definitely something to think about and something to keep in mind. And yeah, on the virtues, Sara now addresses his disciples a disappointing behavior during his absence. Sara mocks his disciples for thinking that he deserves something for being virtuous in his absence. Sara says that there is no reward for being virtuous. Not even virtue is its own reward. He tells them that their virtue should simply be a part of their being, not a series of acts done to gain some kind of reward. Sara is attempting to awaken envy in his disciples by treating them like children who do not understand. Though he explained in a previous speech that his disciples should be proud if they have knowledge that others do not, He now reapproaches the pride that causes them to seek a wrong path on the way to the overman. The kind of pride that seeks reward from man is the opposite of the kind of pride that leads to the overman. Zara tells them that though their virtue is like a child's toy, he will replace that toy with a newer toy with which they can play. On the rebel. Zara then turns his attention to the masses of the unenlightened people. He admits that he actually abhors these people, calling them rebel. This leads to a bigger, more existential question for Zara. Does life actually require this rebel? This is a sickening thought to Zara because it presents the problem that all of humanity may not reach the overman if humanity needs the rebel in society. Zara finds comfort not in thinking about the necessity of the rebel, but instead in envisioning a time when there will be no rebel. Or rebel, I don't actually know. One could say that Zara is putting his faith in a time when the overman will rule, even if he is unsure that his future will exist. Zara compels his disciples not to despair in the necessity of the rebel as he has done, but instead to envision their knowledge and their enlightenment that will, quote-unquote, blow among the rebel like a wind and steal their breath away with my spirit. Zara's teaching is life to those who embrace it, but a death to the rebel who oppose it and clinch to the notions of Christianity, God, and the society that has been created for them. On the tarantulas. The tarantulas. Zara gives his disciples a parable. A tarantula spins a web to coax its enemies into it. The tarantula then strikes with a poisonous bite. For Zara, the tarantula is the teacher of equality, the one who says that all men are equal. But Zara compares himself to one who strikes at the tarantula's web in order to make it leave its cave. Zara strikes at the teachings of those who preach equality in order to make them leave their caves and do battle with him. Zara believes that those who teach equality are preaching against nature. Nature, Zara teaches, makes some superior to others. But the teachers of modern moral equality, i.e. the teachers of Christianity and their descendants, proclaim that all people should be treated with justice as equals. This is foolish, according to Zara. His disciples should not get caught up in such teaching. Zara then condemns these teachers of equality as hypocrites. He says that all they lack to be Pharisees is power, yet through time and inequality they have actually gained that power. Through time and inequality. This is a distinction that Zara says is key to understanding why he has to come back to his disciples. They were getting confusing his teachings and the teachings of those who promote equality. Zara does not promote equality, he promotes the overman, the very essence of inequality. One person must become greater than the others, and envy plays a crucial role in this process. Zara says that life itself is always striving to become more powerful, to make itself higher than other forms and virtues. By the end of the speech, Zara says he has been bitten by the tarantula of the teachings of equality, but he leaves the interpretation of this metaphor to his disciples. He hints that revenge is the necessary reaction to being bitten by such teachings, but he tells his disciples to bind him to this pillar, an allusion to Odysseus being bound to the mast of his ship, so as not to be tempted by the Syrian's song. Here, Zara does not want to be tempted into revenge by the bite of the tarantula of equality. He must continue on towards the goal of the overman and not be sidetracked by such things. On the famous wise man. This speech begins 5 chapters that deal with wisdom and the enemies of Zara's who possess it. The first speech on the famous wise man is directed towards a group that Zara names only as "you famous wise man." Zara mocks these men and their wisdom because, as he says, they serve the people and the people's superstition. He says that these men are not free spirits like he is. Their knowledge is self-serving. It only seeks to increase the wise man's fame and glory. The importance of the speech on the rebel is again shown here. The famous wise man or the famous wise man, well, are only famous because they give the people what they want. The reader is asked to imagine the greater philosophers of the modern age and the political rebellion they put into place for the people. The desire to have the people lift them up becomes a stumbling block to these famous wise men, making them servants to the people. Now, Sarah says, they are tethered to their desire for fame and glory. They cannot be the free winds, or winds, well anyway, as Sarah is, and this is their folly and ruin. The Night Song. This speech is actually a song sung by Sarah. It is the first song of the book. This marks a departure from the previous two styles we have seen in the book, that of narrative and that of the speech/teaching. The song gives the reader an insight into Sarah's personal thoughts and motivations from an interior view instead of having to construct his inner life through his teachings. So it's more literal, I guess. The song begins by lamenting the loneliness of being the only one that can bring this important teaching to the world. Sarah sees his calling as teacher to be both as blessing and as a curse. He feels impoverished because his duty is always to give and never to receive, yet the love in his heart for mankind is beautiful to him as well. These are the things that both drive him and torment him. For the first time in the book, we see Sarah's own envy. While he implored his disciples to envy those who have a great knowledge, Sarah himself envies those who receive. He wishes that he himself could be the one who receives and not the one who always has to give. The song ends as it began, at night and in darkness, and Sarah's soul again breaks out of him like a well, quote unquote, and he decides to go and teach what he has discovered. The dance song, which is going to be not the last one, but the one before. Sarah is walking through the woods looking for a well when he comes upon a green field where he finds several girls dancing together. When they see Sarah, they immediately stop dancing, but he tells them not to stop. He tells them that though they see in him darkness and fear, there is actually love in him and his teaching. To prove that he is not there to spoil their fun, he begins to sing them a song to which they can dance, a song with love in it. The song is a playful conversation on a fishing trip between Sarah and an anthropomorphized character named Life. Well, Life mocks Sarah for his teaching, saying that even if he cannot understand life, she is not incomprehensible. Sarah is simply not sharp enough to comprehend her. There is a comparison here between the wisdom that Sarah has between both proclaiming and battling and Life that he believes he cannot fathom. Life says that she can be fathomed only if Sarah does away with the necessities of wisdom that he seeks. Sarah sees himself as being caught in a lover's triangle with wisdom and life, both calling him to abandon the other. This will lead Sarah to a greater revelation, the will to power, in part 3. Life knows that Sarah loves her more than he loves wisdom, but he is afraid to tell her. Sarah praises wisdom, but she turns his praise on its head, suggesting that when Sarah praises his wisdom, he is really praising life. It is clear that Life favors Sarah, though we are unsure at this point whether she has given her secret to him. As the song closes, Sarah becomes sad. The sun has set, signaling the setting of Sarah's wisdom as well, and he is confused about what it is that he has been seeking. He tries to apologize to his disciples, but he has no answer for them. "Forgive me my sadness," he tells them. "Evening came, forgive me that evening came." This signals a great confusion in Sarah's thoughts. The Grave Song. The Grave Song is the last of Sarah's songs. This song, like the first song, is a song of solitude. The graves of which Sarah speaks are the graves of his past, parts of him that he have died and lay out of his reach. As the song begins, Sarah decides to sail to those graves. The first part of the song is Sarah's lament for the lost visions of his youth. He believes that these visions have been disloyal to him and have abandoned him. He then realizes that in actuality they have been murdered by his enemies. His youth visions experienced the death that was meant for him. The second part of the song is a curse on his enemies. Sarah condemns his enemies for stealing and killing his vision of eternity and the Overman. He recounts all of the things he used to believe, explaining how all these ideas have been murdered. Though he realizes that he is no longer able to dance beyond all heavens, quote unquote, he resolves to dance again and resurrect his hope. Or resurrect. The final part of the song is Sarah's resolution to regain those visions. Even though they have been taken from him by his enemies, he decides that he will no longer despair. Instead, through sheer force of will, he will regain those visions. Sarah realizes that there is something invulnerable, unburiable in me. Something that explodes boulders. It is called my will. This song is an important turning point for Zarathustra. In it, the reader learns about his past before his first period of solitude. The reader learns that Sarah once had youthful vision, but they were killed in him by the teachings of Christianity and modern society. Though those visions no longer exist, Sarah has made an important discovery: his will to power. What this will to power is and what it means will be explored throughout the rest of the book. And I do gotta have to say, I don't know how much I would get out of the book by actually reading it instead of the summary or analysis, which I'm actually very grateful for having. But yeah, I think it is an amazing book, and it's a really good story. It really is an interesting story, I think. Well, yeah. Gonna see you the next time. See you. Bye-bye.